this board meeting to order. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. So today here we have Joe Bronner, Paul Carey, Steve Smalley, Betty Robinson, and Christine Osborne present from the board. Only lacking John Kinney. All right, so moving forward, number 2, approval of consent agenda, November 22nd, 2024 meeting minutes.
Recording in progress.
Can I get a motion? Okay.
Can I ask a question? Do you plan on attending this lengthy attachment to those meetings? That seems to be a rather speculative document in the opinion of one person or two people. And I just wonder if it has if its appropriate position is, if you will, quote, officially, unquote, attached to the minutes.
Builder's letters were attached to the minutes. That's what he's talking.
Say it one more time. Oh, the builder's letters? Okay, and
Yes.
what's the issue with that?
He thinks that's a lengthy amount to attach to the minutes. I attached them to the minutes because it was mentioned in the meeting they would be attached to the minutes.
Okay, so just the fact that they're mentioned, and that's part of the agenda that we mentioned it, and so Dora attached it. I guess it didn't necessarily need to be attached, however we spoke about it. So other than it being lengthy, do you have an issue with it outside of that?
Yeah, I just think it's a rather narrow and speculative view of the current problem. And the current problem is I want my builder to put a $3 million lot on one of the $3 million home on one of the stage 1 lots that were all designed for ocean cottages. And it's something that's fairly deep rooted, in my opinion, in the ARC guidelines that were developed in the late 1990s that have never addressed the change or the inflation in home cost, and B, forced various groups to resort to managing them differently than we have in the past.
Okay. I hear exactly what you're saying, Joe. So are you wanting to make a motion to alter the minutes to discard those builder letters?
I just think we need to be very careful with them because they're very subjective. And while I agree totally with Kent's letter, which is the final document, because I ran the ARC for 5 years, 2 under him and 3 under the association, I don't believe the multi-pages of other interpretation is exactly right. It just seems to highlight a current problem where I've got a client and I want to build a bigger home on a smaller lot.
If I could, probably for different reasons, I agree with Joe, because typically we don't put all these documents in our minutes, do we?
No, not usually.
Okay, so
I just think as a matter of practice, minutes are supposed to reflect the discussion we had and maybe refer to documents but not include the documents. I think that's typically what we've done, and that's probably not a bad process. Is that fair?
yeah, for sure. So if someone wants to make that motion that we detach those documents, they're kept in our folders, and that's fine. And in the future, not attach a multitude of documents to our minutes.
I would move that the minutes reference the documents, not include them.
Okay, so that's a motion.
I second that.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, that passed.
I've got it. Hey, Christine, I have one small question on the minutes. I believe I made a motion seconded by Steve with John and Betty wanted more time to review. So I withdrew the motion to potentially be reintroduced this month or next month. I don't really care that we have it in the minutes as long as people acknowledge that's what happened.
That is what happened.
Okay,
Mhm.
that's fine. I just didn't want to go up into.
I don't have it on the minutes because it was withdrawn. I can put it in the minutes as well.
I don't really care whether it's in the minutes or not. I just want to make sure that
I think we
whatever.
all noted.
I can note it,
Okay.
yeah.
No, that's fine. That's sorry to be picky, but
That's not picky.
Okay,
I'm
So
already
then-
changing these suckers. We can
so
add.
then a point of order is, do we have to, so we're not approving the consent, or we're not approving the prior minutes yet. We're
Correct.
amending the prior minutes.
We'll have to amend them and then approve them after they're amended.
Yes, so you can either approve them at the next meeting, or if you want, you guys can approve them.
You can send out an
Okay.
email if you
Right.
want. I think
Okay.
that's-
Sounds good.
Because it'll be unanimous.
I just have to say, I'm getting over some bronchitis. I'm not contagious. No. I'm not contagious. But if I end up with a coughing hack, I'm out there.
And plus,
Yeah.
make sure you have water with you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so moving on
well,
to that.
Betty, just to be careful, a friend of ours from the island just spent 2 days in the hospital with pneumonia because what started off as bronchitis got worse and worse.
So in other words, you're.
Are you on antibiotics?
But
Certainly a cheerful meeting.
but of course,
Thank you for that.
while he was
Forewarned is forearmed, right?
well, to finish the story, while he was sick, he spent a few days in Vegas, so I don't think that helped us.
Still go to Vegas.
The dry air.
That sounds like, I know who that sounds like a Jason story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that was, all right, so we need to vote to not approve the minute. The motion on the table is to not approve, consent agenda.
Well, is the
No.
motion it's not to not approve it. It's just that we're going to,
Waylay it.
we're gonna table the motion to approve.
Okay, so we need nothing, to do nothing.
The motion I have is that Joe Bronner motioned that we detach the letters from the minutes, but have it mentioned that there were letters in the minutes. And also to add Paul's motion that was withdrawn.
Just as a point of order, do we have a protocol that says all meeting materials will be preserved for X amount of time? And where is that preservation?
It's in our document retention, I believe. I want to say that digitally, we keep them indefinitely, and paper-wise, they're kept for 7 years or possibly.
And so
10 years.
anything that transpired in a meeting, whether it was submitted digitally or in paper, is taken away and put in a file somewhere?
It's definitely digital, it's filed digitally, and then the papers are filed into a file, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So it's a good
But
point.
I guess I really don't understand why the minutes cannot be approved. I have no problem with the minutes. It's the attachment.
Well, what also happened right after that was that Paul wants his statements to be included, so.
Okay.
The motion that was withdrawn, so if I'm
Okay, so one additional question about the document retention is that the availability of this information on the team side only goes back to 2022.
Okay, that's not 7 years, but.
I mean, it's probably there. It's just not available for us to view anything prior to that.
if I can find it, I can.
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we look at the document retention policy, and then look at it next month rather than try to figure it out in the meeting?
Oh, yeah, and
On-
Paul,
on
Yeah. Oh, I had just done that with Russ in the last month or so, and I think we're good on the policy. It's just a matter of the retrieval.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to know because there are times you don't want to keep documents.
All right. So it's there. We just can't get it.
Well, yeah, what let's take, well, anyway.
Okay. All right, if there's nothing more on that, we can move forward to number 3, member comments. There is no one in the room. Dora, do we have anyone online?
Does anyone online would like to say anything?
Who's online?
Mr. Nixon.
Okay.
All right.
Good morning, Bob.
No, he's just online listening.
Oh, he's just online. Okay.
Just present.
No hand raised. Okay. Moving on to, and is it fair to say if someone comes in here pretty soon that we would go ahead and let them speak? Does anyone have an issue with that? I know it won't be in the order, but I would say to not allow
I'm
that.
fine with that. I don't know if it's-
Okay, we're moving on to number 4, director's report. Mr. Russ Curtis.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so all of you are aware of the red flags, green flags concept. Red flags meaning areas that are not going as well as we would like, but green flags meaning better news. So we'll start with the red flags. The first one is that remaining staff vacancy is being pursued. It's in process. We are very pleased with the efforts with new responsibilities that Dora has embarked upon, as well as Kim in the communications role. We have selected Mara Wild and Allison Hefner to join the ARC team, and they're off to good beginnings. They're still going through the onboarding and training process and getting up to speed on things, but they're energetic and they're working hard. We still have one vacancy in the ARC assistant position. We had a couple of candidates that were close, but not quite the fit that we wanted. So we're going through a process again for interviewing, and hopefully that'll be selected very soon, and then that person will be selected. So that's where that stands.
And Russ, there is one approved head count, which would have been Dora's replacement, just circling out there, right?
Yes, if that's
Is that in the budget?
that's a decision point that will happen soon, whether Dora continues with that role or we have another person. So
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
And Russ, sorry, just another question. So the 2 new hired, that was in addition to the one hired the prior month. So we've had.
No, we're only missing one. If Dora continues in that role, one vacancy.
Right, but if we had 2 new hires, I thought we had 3.
We've had 2 new hires in the last 2 months.
Okay, yeah,
Yes.
just clarifying. Thanks.
Second one, we have continued concern with the certain ARC guidelines. Y'all are well familiar with this. We're going to talk about this later. I won't belabor that discussion. The next one is we need to refresh the reserve study in 2025. My suggestion was to start that in the first quarter. It's going to take time to work with the firm on that. I think that's something we want to get going on before we get too much into the season. And I think that's a good opportunity for us to look at what's been effective with the reserve study, what has not been effective, and then try to make it more logical as we go forward and a better tool. It's a good thing that we've got it, but I think we can make it even better if we go forward. And I think the final one is a more general comment. This is not directed at anyone individually, but I think collectively, we need to have a better consistency with respectful communications. I think that applies to everyone, staff, committees, board, the membership in general. My experience in recent readings of articles for both clubs and associations is that the tone of civility is down in general in our society. I think it manifests itself through our groups. We've all had some experience with this, and we can disagree, but we need to disagree respectfully. So I think that's the message. And I believe that's something that perhaps the board may consider for a goal that we could work towards for not just the board, but also the staff, as well as committees going forward next year. I just think that's a good message if we can get that across. Green flags, things that are a little bit better. The refreshed Allen report is planned for 2025. Kim is working on that. That's planned for January, February. The first issue is probably not going to be quite as robust as it will be in the spring, so keep that in mind. All the advertisers are not quite on board yet, but they're getting there. So this one might be a little bit skinnier, but I think by the time we get to springtime, it'll be well received, and I think you'll like the updates. The candidate forum was well received by the attendees. We had a number of good comments there. We had 4 out of the 5 that attended in person. The 5th one came in later, but was asked the same questions, and that's available both in a written format and also in a video format that members can see. And we're going to refresh that effort with communications, which I think y'all have received the outline for that. Hopefully many times that they can see different aspects of what the candidates are interested in as we go forward. The annual meeting speakers, I think, will be beneficial for the ballhead members to hear from. Similar to last year, we're going to have representatives from a lot of different constituencies with the club, the village, Ballhead Limited, Old Baldy, the Conservancy, and the chapel. I think we're still confirming the chapel, correct? So hopefully that'll be well received, as well as public service.
All of our meeting on Saturday.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, now we have a separate meeting before that as a board, but that would be the annual meeting, yes.
But that also
What is
occurs
that
on Saturday.
date?
The day before.
Friday before, the 24th? Okay.
The search for the executive director is well underway. We have a committee meeting scheduled this afternoon. And we've received some preliminary information about a number of strong candidates. The committee will then meet with the search firm and discuss those and start the process of understanding the strengths of these individuals and start to identify the better fits. And hopefully that will be narrowed down to a smaller number. And then the physical interviews will take place in January. So we're encouraged with that. We'll know a lot more later today, but that's a good start, and I appreciate the committee's efforts on that. And also the benefits package has been shopped and revised. We mentioned this a couple of months ago. We're going to continue with the medical benefits for the staff that we had, but the other benefits in relation to vision, dental, and life, we did switch carriers. I think they're frankly a little bit stronger than they were, and the costs are in line with our budget, or if not better. So I think that worked out pretty well. The other thing I'll update you on briefly is I mentioned at the last meeting that we were looking at the overlook, the lagoon treatment for the water. I met with a gentleman, 2 gentlemen that work with a company called Aquedoc. And this is a company that the village works with and also the club works with. So they've already got a presence on the island. And as it turns out, I had some experience working with this gentleman in a prior assignment at McGregor Downs. I just didn't know it, but he put in an aerator for that club that I worked with. And they've got some creative solutions on how to improve the water quality. They're going to present that to me. We can make some decisions. It may not involve a complete physical permanent aerator initially, but there might be some other things that can be done to help with that. So more to follow on that, but I'll let you know it's underway. They thought it was good that we're being proactive on that before we have a real problem, and we're not ignoring it. And if we get ahead of it, hopefully we can stay ahead of it. That'll last for many years. So where that stands.
That's where the estimates that you had after speaking with him kind of in line with what you had talked about last month.
It could be less. There could be some short-term aeration decisions that might be less than that. That would be in line if there were in fact physical long-term aerators, but I'm not sure we have to go quite that far yet. So I'll let you know when I find out more.
And so Russ has been speaking to Adam, who has been the greenskeeper there for so many years and has great knowledge. And so I think he's educated Russ quite a bit, and he'll continue his talks, or at a later date, our new executive director will.
And, obviously before we make any decision, we will loop in the other constituents to make sure that they're aware of it. We don't want to do this in isolation, but I think we're looking at methods that can be minimal in terms of impact to nature, but also helpful in terms of the health of that lagoon. So that's what we're after. Thank you.
Hey, Russ,
Yes.
on the speakers, do they understand we've got a 5-minute time limit? Because last year.
Yes, and we're going to reinforce that message, Paul.
Okay, that's fine. It's great. It got
crazy.
Tedious.
So Paul, the good that Russ and Dora are making sure that all of these things are being turned in beforehand and looked at, and so it's going to be evident to Dora if this looks like it's a 5-minute or a 15-minute presentation, and she'll get it whittled down well before the date.
Okay, great. I just it makes for it's important to do this, but a brisk update
Yeah.
from everyone really helps rather than a
Well,
long.
because bottom line, it's nice to have everyone in one room and to just get a tidbit of information from them, because guess what? They all have their own annual meetings. So we can go to those other meetings if we want to get the whole story.
Right.
And there's not another meeting scheduled in the same time slot as ours, is there?
That never happens. They move around,
Okay,
making sure that we don't, step on each other's toes. Okay. Thank you, Russ.
Thank you.
Moving on to Leanne Fink with the monthly financials for November 2024. Thank you, Leanne.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
I didn't change much on the summary sheet this time, except I updated the balances, on the, accounts. And I also, just updated what our contingency funds include right now. On the budget comparison, you'll notice that the, revenue or the income is down. And I looked to see how it's going this month, and we're due to get a little over $20,000 in filing fees this month. And also the deletion of the mulch affected that, but so that explains that one, and it'll, when we get that money in, well, we've already got it, but y'all don't know that. It'll straighten out income statement. Yes.
Leanne, I just have a question. You say interest income is understated. Does that mean under plan? About $8,000?
Where we at, Paul?
What?
Where are we? What are you talking about?
Back on the summary sheet. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just want to make sure. Interest income on BHA reserves is understated. That means we are under plan by 8,000. That's what you mean, right?
No, what that means is we didn't account for as much as we thought. I mean, we're getting more than we thought. Did I say it backwards? That one's been on there.
Yeah, understated is a little we are $8,000 approximately over budget for interest income is what you're saying.
Okay.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, it's a great thing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just caught it this read through. So no, that's fine. That's good news. Because I would think, given where rates have been, we probably were pretty conservative on our forecast that we would have been over. Okay, fine. I understand.
Okay. Other than that, I don't have anything that's changed. We've still got, in the 90s on our aging report. Russ is going to talk to you one in the executive session. He's going to talk to one that may help with that, but looking good on getting our money in.
Okay, we did a small loan between funds 2 months ago, was it?
Oh,
Didn't
yeah, we're still in there. I'm going to do a report on that next month. If I need to still keep it, I'm going to try to explain all that.
Is there any way to clear that up before year end?
If we can, we will. I just didn't have enough money in those two accounts to pay for.
Well, why don't we? I mean, those loans back and forth are pretty typical, and I don't have a problem with them at all, obviously. But clearing them up before year end just makes the audit look a lot cleaner. So, if possible, I would make every attempt to reimburse the other fund, and I forgot which one went to which one by year end. Again, it's not critical.
If we don't, I took it out of the operating account because that's where we had the most money. But if you determine that you want it to come out of their reserves, we can do that too. Like each of the drip line particular reserves, I noticed that's done some. So we can look at it next month.
Okay, that's fine.
I just wanted to ask a question, and I apologize. I did not read the finances before this meeting.
I believe it.
I didn't. I just wanted to know, is there any additional income we had in 2024 that we're applying to 2025?
I think so. Yeah.
No, I thought we had a surplus.
Well,
No.
okay then.
As I recall, when Russ went back through the budget, a lot of that was used up. What we originally thought was going to be a surplus was used up related to the, mostly to the executive director transition, if I recall correctly, Russ. Is that right?
We do project a surplus for the year, but some of those entries will come forward in December, and the reserves also have to be reconciled before the end of the year. So yes, that's still projected.
You still project an overage in income
Well, no, and overall.
that you can apply to
bottom line-
2025?
bottom line, yes, we do. still
Okay,
project.
what's the magnitude,
I'm sorry,
order of magnitude?
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
What is the order of magnitude of the overage that you think we're gonna,
Well, it's
1,000, 10,000?
it's approximately 10 to 20,000. That's not.
Okay,
It's not.
all right, just wondering.
Yeah,
Must have
at the first crack through on the budget, we thought it was larger than that, but after projecting the fourth quarter costs, that went away. So,
Okay,
but
All right, thank you.
it's much smaller than we originally thought.
okay.
I have a procedural question here, and it's maybe me just looking at the balance sheet. We can refer to the balance sheet. Maybe I'm missing something here, but there are significant changes in the accounts between October and November. I mean, very significant. And again, maybe one is cumulative and the other was just a monthly. But you have significant swings here.
Which ones are you?
Just look at the balance sheet.
Yeah, I'm on the balance sheet. Which
Right.
ones are you?
So operating funds, reserve funds, total bank funds
So
increased by the total bank funds increased from 23,000 to 2 million. Reserve funds, et cetera, the same. All of these had tremendous changes as reported on this sheet.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't look at that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know.
I mean, like massive changes. There you are, Betty.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Something's wrong in that. Something's wrong in the October.
Yeah,
Something's wrong there.
Yeah, your
Yeah,
Vanguard.
something's wrong in the October one.
Yeah, your Vanguard went from 8,000 to 392,000.
Yeah.
That's a heck of a return.
That's an October thing. I see that.
Exactly
I
the same.
will get that and resend you that and
Okay.
correct.
So this balance sheet is shown here is incorrect.
The October thing appears to be off.
Well, then that makes the
Well-
November sheet incorrect as well.
Okay.
But you're saying that's something you can look
I
at.
can fix this. Probably a formula thing.
Okay.
It's great that it's in the favorable direction, but it's,
Yeah, I got you. It's just, thank
I
you.
mean, but
Thanks,
maybe somebody went to Vegas.
I know. You can go to Vegas.
Right. Okay,
All since they're sick there.
okay, thank you. So,
Okay.
all right.
So I missed the beginning of that was going on. What was that noise in the background?
That's what I couldn't hear you.
Oh, somebody else on the
There's
line?
somebody else on the line. So who
It's-
is that?
Kim goes on for these in case something happens where we have members come in. I need somebody, an extra set of hands. She usually has it muted. It wasn't muted for.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's, so as you see in the box where it says Baldwin Association.
And I thought that was.
That's her up there in her cubicle. Usually she has it muted. It must have unmuted while she's, because she's doing other things while she's
Gotcha,
helping.
gotcha.
but yeah.
Okay.
So we caught a little bit of her multitasking. Yes, Terry is online. I can let him in. Or allow him to speak.
Okay, moving on to number 6, ARC document proposal. I've got a little draft motion that Russ and I have been working on, and I'd like to read that for you all. This looks like the one.
Yeah, there's a couple in the packet.
It's the same one, so I'll still go through it. Draft motion 12/2024. The Bald Head Association BHA Board will request that the ARC-A and ARC-B chairs propose amend language in the ARC guidelines to modernize and simplify the documents. Consideration should be fairness, consistency, and also flexibility, given that many of the prime real estate lots are already developed. Frequent issues that have been brought forward recently by owners, builders, and designers are the 6-foot rule, 60/40 guidelines, 50% rule, complexity of guideline dependencies, and a lack of clarity on approved paint colors. The chairs of the ARC are asked to review and discuss the guidelines with the ARC coordinator, ARC specialist, interim executive director, and assistant director. They also may gain input from architectural review committee members. After the review and drafting of amended language, a review by BHA attorney will occur. The target for completion of this project is before an executive session scheduled for February 21st, 2025, and will be presented to the board by Terry Steelman. After amended language is agreed to by the board, an educational video will be developed in spring 2025 to help owners, builders, and designers more easily understand the ARC application process. This should lead to an improvement in complete and timely submittals and higher satisfaction with the ARC in 2025. Before we vote, we want to go ahead and what Terry has to say about this. Good morning, Terry. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me, Christine?
Certainly can.
Okay. Can you see me?
No.
Yeah, I don't know why my camera is not on. Well, I apologize for that because I'm not sure I can get it changed this quickly. But in any case, Russ did share this memo with me, and I know we have been in conversation in past board meetings about the need to update some of the language akin to what this memo addresses. The one thing I would add is that's a pretty significant undertaking. And so I think that the only thing that I think this is a good first step in this motion. The one thing that I would request is that we look at a slightly different time frame to rewrite the entire document, but to in an even shorter time frame focus on addressing what I think are the two hottest topics that have been coming up, which is the 60% undisturbed rule, which becomes gets complicated with the addition of the 6-foot setback from construction structures. So if the board would entertain a modification to this, I think it would make this process move more smoothly if we could spend the next between now and the annual meeting on January 25th in getting back to the board with the ARC reviewing and adopting, as is appropriate procedure, a modification to some of that language which I've already undertaken and contemplated. Try to get that approved by the both ARCs by the January 25th, and then for us to really roll up our sleeves and attack the totality of the document. I do worry about trying to take on the entire thing in a 2-month window. Is that clear, Christine?
It is clear.
Okay.
Okay. Does anyone
For
have any
it's worth,
questions?
I agree totally with that. I think we really do need to look at the guidelines in their entirety, and that can't be done instantly, and it can't be done thoroughly by February 21st.
Yeah, and Joe, my goal is that in doing that is not to just kick the can down the road, but to provide appropriate amount of time with that, but not lose time on dealing with some of the issues that are the most burning at this moment.
Yeah, I guess I'm coming at it slightly differently. I think that back before the turn of the century, when I was chair of the ARC, the guidelines, I think, expanded all the way to 22 pages. And I think we've done nothing but add layers of complexity and potential for misinterpretation and getting back to where we have to go and where we need to go is a huge undertaking, especially given the fact that the homes that the original guidelines we're looking at were built 50 years ago, some of them.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you.
That's a fair point. All right, we still have, go ahead, Betty.
I just had a comment, and I shared this with Russ the other day. I'm totally in agreement with our immediate approach to deal with 60/40, 6 foot, and the current friction point. I think that follows in line with I think where we landed after the last meeting. And so, Terry, I appreciate your willingness to attack this and actually bring it into a discussion timeframe in January. I just wanted to say to the board, I think as we look at the upcoming year, with all of the conversations we've had and all of the input we've gotten, I truly think we need to take a step back and think about this entire process from end to end, and not just jump on guideline changes, but say, you know, let's take into consideration the change in the types of lots that are out there. Let's take into consideration the technology that might support our process. Let's take into consideration all the feedback we've gotten. And I realize that sounds like a big undertaking, but I think if we can approach it from a process perspective and have the right supporting guidelines, technology, and customer input during the process, we might come out with a better designed product. So I feel as though we're trying really hard to address the friction points, and that's our job. But if it comes down to actually looking at this document in its entirety, I think we need to consider some different approaches to that. That would be my input. But Terry, thank you for working with Russ and the others to come up with this proposal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was still remembering that Terry is a very busy guy in the real world and takes a lot of time with and for us on this island. And we appreciate that. And he has been, you know, in high gear with this here recently, understanding that, you know, we've had a lot of complaints, a lot of issues. And Terry does see some of this, and he's ready to move forward. So we appreciate that. And if there's no other questions for Terry.
No, I've got some questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Marty.
Some of his history, because this 60/40 rule, which is driven by the undisturbed. I guess in working through it, what does undisturbed mean as we wrote it? I didn't write it, so.
Yeah. Well, I don't think any of us wrote it, but I think this maybe you didn't, but yeah.
I mean, Drummeller's made the point that the board made a change in the last 5 years or so on the undisturbed, and that is.
Yeah, I think the point that is being made, Paul, is the undisturbed language. The 60% undisturbed language really hasn't modified in decades. I think the thing that has changed, as I've kind of tried to peel back the understanding of this, is the application of the 6 foot setback from the undisturbed. And so I think that is the thing that has gotten more confusing. And you know, I've even in the last few weeks gone back to really understand what the language actually says about the 6 foot, and it right now it really only refers to it within the setbacks, not even related to the 60% undisturbed itself. So I think it's a pretty simple in my mind to clarify this, and I've even taken a first run at what I think some of that language could be that would mitigate the confusion and the complaints, candidly, that we've been been receiving.
Okay, but let me just go back to it. What does undisturbed mean? Because the
Undisturbed, yeah, undisturbed basically means an area within the site in which no construction is occurring. And so basically, it's from the limits of construction. The limits of construction would be framed within the 40%. And that's defined pretty clearly in the guidelines. I think the question that has been raised is if something happened in the undisturbed area, what is the mitigation potential within that? And I think that language could be articulated that could address what happens if the natural vegetation in that 60% undisturbed area is damaged or disturbed during construction.
Yeah,
how do you
but
mitigate that?
yeah, I'm at something a little more basic. I'm talking about even post construction, because these houses, after they're built and approved, what does undisturbed mean?
Well, so
Are
the
you-
guidelines are pretty clear on what you can and can't do within not just the undisturbed, but the whole lot post construction. And it may be more punitive than I might personally prefer for it to be, but it says you can't cut down anything that's greater than 1 inch in diameter. I think it's 3 feet above grade. So I think that is pretty clearly articulated right now in the guidelines.
All right, well,
What you can do outside in that area.
one of the things we probably ought to do is also looking at our enforcement post construction, because there are fairly new homes that have basically clear cut their yards.
Well, and that is absolutely the case, Paul. And anytime that it is that we notice it, it's reported. Part of the challenge is, and this is a challenge for the board, is what are the consequences for that? The Dora and her group go out and notify them of a violation. And there are oftentimes fines applied. And I don't know how often those fines are challenged back to the board or how often the board actually enforces those fines, but we track them. I should say I mean the staff tracks them.
Well, we haven't had any we had any fines for that. I mean, that gray house with the black windows that's fairly new.
Mhm.
That is clear cut.
Yep. And there's one on Kennekeet that also very recently constructed that was also pretty clear cut.
Well, yeah, and so I mean, that needs to be addressed because
Yep.
we are on certain lots, we come down hard. On certain lots, we allow a bigger house to be built. On certain lots, we enforce it. On certain lots, we don't. And you can't do that. And that's, I guess, so I don't even know what. I mean,
Yeah, I can't speak to the implication of inconsistency. What I can speak to is if anyone, on the staff and our ARC observe something that is perceived to be or known to be a violation, we report it and capture it. I can't speak to the enforcement.
I think that this is an important item when we actually look at our processes. Do our actions related to violations, are they handled consistently? Are they handled meaningfully? And I agree with Paul that I think we sometimes do and sometimes don't enforce some of this. And I think that's a process issue that in order for us to have any teeth, we've got to say, this is what we're going to do.
Well, I'd like to add that if something has been brought to the board in my tenure this year
Tree-wise, especially.
we have dealt with it, and we have taken the recommendation from either the ARC, A or B, and or Kim or Dora, and Dora brings it to us, conveys what's going on. We ask for her recommendation, we debate it, and we typically, I want to say right down the board here this year, we've done exactly what Dora's asked us to do.
Right.
So if it reaches the board, we've dealt with it.
Yeah.
But we can't deal with what doesn't come to us, we can't deal with.
True.
And working alongside of the clear cutting and the tree removals that have been happening recently have been more, I feel like, I don't want to say this, like, it has been a little bit more sloppy when it comes to that. So we as staff have been going out and we're taking more pictures now. We're tracking more because it's more or less on us to make sure versus a trusting of who's clear cutting anymore.
Absolutely.
So we are in the process of refining that. We're training our new girls with the same kind of concept. But anything that has come to the board tree related has been pretty much, I would say almost 100%. You guys have said, hey, if this is clear cutting, this gets defined.
Well, I think we're talking about two different things here, really. And just as a precatory statement, I'd like to thank Terry for your good work, not only throughout the year, but also specifically on this project, because so I think it is important, not only because it's important for its own sake, but it's important in as much as we've had so much, I don't know, controversy is the right word, but it probably is.
Yeah,
about,
that's right.
you know, among builders and all that about what they see as inconsistent application. So there's the two issues here are the interpretations of the site plan at the outset, and then and how much buildable area and how that's calculated. That's one set. The other on the back end, what you were just talking about is problem one is how do you calculate and how do you calculate 60/40 and how does that relate to the landscape plan? That's one issue.
Yes.
The second is on the back end, are we enforcing the landscape plan? Because the landscape plan, I think in as much as the landscape plan in a vacuum is pretty clear that, you know, thou shall do this, thou shall not do this. And here's what I agreed to at the outset in terms of the landscape plan. I don't think there's any controversy in the landscape plan itself. It's just a matter of, are we consistently monitoring and enforcing that in the back end?
It's part of their final inspection.
Right, it's part of the final.
It has to go through it. I know that when I bring the final inspection violations to you all, it's, you know, showing you, hey, these are 5 violations, you know, that would be like you know, for the finding purposes. But oftentimes one of those 5 violations is they were supposed to plant 3 trees here and they chose to plant 1 here, you know, right. So it is included in that. One of the things too, to try to keep in mind, especially, Paul, I heard you rattle off a couple addresses. A lot of those are Cape Fear Station. And what's really hard to understand about Cape Fear Station is you are taking these little tiny pie slice lots and you are slamming a house in there. Between the house and the lake and everything else, it tends to
yeah, what I was referring to was on North Baldhead Wind, but yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just heard Kennedy come up, but it's one of those
Yeah,
things
but the
where
one Paul's is the one you're referring to is.
But the ones that I'm kind of referring to is I've had a lot of homeowners come out in Cape Fear Station be like, these guys are taking out everything. They're clear cutting everything. Well, I'll go out there with a site plan and literally see that every tree they said they were supposed to keep on that site plan is on that site plan. It's a very small lot next to someone who's lived next to woods for the last 10, 15, 20 years. Yeah. So it is kind of a balance between how it feels and what's actually being taken off.
Sure, understand that.
Yeah. No, I understand that, but again, I mean, one of the things we have to be careful is that if we're going to have these rules need to be enforced through construction and then through the life of that property, right?
Yes.
And it doesn't seem like we're doing, and believe me, I'm the last guy who wants to start finding everybody who's cut down a bush. But if we're going to be so stringent on the approval, we need to be stringent post-approval forever. And everyone's got a landscape plan. Do we ever check people's landscape plans after they've moved in and approved?
What's the name of that committee?
Yeah, after there is a post-construction final sign-off Paul, where the staff goes out and confirms that what was built was indeed consistent with what was approved. And we very often get some, very often get some post-construction modifications that have to come back to the ARC for for post-approval.
Yeah,
Too
I
often,
guess.
too often, candidly, but
Yeah,
yeah, there is a check.
Yeah, but that happens once. What happens?
Yeah, it only happens once.
It doesn't happen.
After that is CW community-wide standards, but they can only look from the street.
Yeah, I guess all I'm getting at is I still don't. We can sort of act like a legislature and pass things that are unenforceable. And if we're going to have rules, we need to enforce them, and they need to be enforced consistently, not just at the end of construction. Because patting ourselves on the back for passing a rule that is not going to be enforced is really, we look silly.
Yeah.
Paul, when it comes to clear cutting the lots, I do agree. And I know I reported one on South Baldhead Line. And every time I go by it, I curse because the entire lot is a dirt pit. It has never come here for any discussion.
That exact lot you were talking about is a major renovation. Up until literally getting this new person in, we have not addressed final inspections with major renovations because our last ARC specialist who came in was taking care of new builds that were 3-4 years old and trying to get them in. We are now caught up staff-wise to do such a thing. Right now, that has gone through the ARC and it's in its final process. Basically, what I have to do is I have to go back into my backlogs and find was taken out via pictures, thanks to the CWS committee, actually. But I have to go back into that backlog now that they have that approved. And yes, it will be coming to the board. And just
and if I can be clear, what I'm raising here is not a criticism of CWS or the staff. It is a criticism that we create rules that we know we can't enforce. And so it just creates less confidence in the BHA's ability to do what we're supposed to do. And so I'm not being critical of you, Dora, or your staff. You got a lot to do. And I know since the CWS has gotten into action, it's gotten a lot of good things done, but we're creating these rules that are virtually unenforceable because if we enforce them on the lot that's being constructed, we do it a year later, we need to do it 20 years later. And I don't think we can do that. I don't know if that's, do you see what I'm getting at? And so we end up with these long guidelines that everyone gets worked up about them and then we ignore them after the house passes approval, other than, unless someone.
Paul, I agree with you totally. When we built, we were coerced into putting in, and this is years ago, several $1,000s worth of irrigation equipment, which after the first year, I promptly turned off, never used. It fell into disrepair, and nobody said boo. And there's just no way. Again, some of these homes are built 50 years ago. Stuff grows in 50 years, and I don't think the BHA has a dog in that fight.
Joe, well, the irrigation is I don't even know why we ever required irrigation because we're supposed to be environmentally sensitive and conserve things, and water's one of the things this island has an issue with, and then we require people to put in irrigation systems, which are.
So Paul, just for awareness, it is fairly standard practice that you cannot get landscape to survive being planted unless it is irrigated for the first year.
Terry, I understand that, but that we require someone to spend the money is one thing, but it is such a waste of a pretty valuable resource.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the where we should be is in making sure the landscape survives the first year. Because once it survives the first year, it is likely to survive long term.
All right.
You know, so
Business opportunity to me.
yeah.
I'm gonna start that business, no more irrigation, anti-irrigation, I'm gonna come water your plants for you.
Oh, no, please do, because I hired a landscaper 2.5 years ago to repair Florence damage, and they still haven't come out.
Oh, no.
I paid them too.
And then,
Could I suggest that we
Go ahead, Betty.
adjust this motion to scale it to what Terry recommended? Terry, did you in any way rewrite this motion to fit with what you
I did not.
suggest?
I did not. I could restate what I think, how I would modify it. Yeah, if you would like. I think I would simply modify it to suggest that we change the time frame for rewriting the entire document, uh, uh, and not put a specific time frame on that, but in between now and the annual meeting at January 25th, the ARCs, both ARCs, review and propose modification to the language relative to the 60% undisturbed area and the 6-foot rule that brings clarity to that, in the spirit that Christine's memo articulated, trying to create fairness and flexibility to accommodate what we know are challenges on some of these new and smaller lots.
um,
One comment on the 6-foot rule. There seems to be a shift toward treating it like the 11th commandment, and there's always been flexibility around it, or at least there was when we built our first home back in the dark ages. We were allowed to go in and or to go beyond that because of the topography on the lot, but we had to repair and replace the stuff outside of 6 feet, which seems that gives the ARC flexibility to work with, the designer and the home builder.
And Joe, I will say, having taken a first run at this language, that is the way I have imagined it, where it said a reasonable, quote, a reasonable construction clearance between the structure and the 60% undisturbed area as delineated by the limits of construction shall be established, and any damage to native vegetation within the 60% undisturbed area shall be resulting from construction shall require, in-kind mitigation. So I think that's the way that I'm looking at wording this in a formal proposal to the ARCs.
can we, do we know how many? I'm sure we have a file on it for the approvals in the last 5 years, who has gotten variances from this rule.
I don't think this has ever come up as a variance. And then, Paul, the one part that is interesting, and I think I articulated this in our last meeting, it's actually in the guideline referred to as a I can't remember the exact word, but a suggestion, to be evaluated on based upon the specifics of the lots, which I think is probably something that we haven't been doing in absolute accordance with the guidelines. It's been perceived as a little more black and white, and I think the guidelines actually currently have it as more of a soft rule as opposed to a hard rule.
Yeah, that's what a number of
Yeah.
the property owners, when they come to us this year, have said it's a suggestion,
Mhm.
but we were told it's not a suggestion, it is a rule.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I've already started to try to socialize within the ARCs.
Okay, because I mean, here I've got a lot of concerns about this. As we all know, it's been inconsistently applied. Um, if you don't show in your application that you're below 40%, the ARC will not even review your application in some cases. I think that's inappropriate. And then, with this rule that we have, I mean, they just listed that lot that we created, approved last year up on the Dune Ridge. It's a $4 million lot, and it's sort of a pipe stem lot.
Yep.
0.6 of an acre. I bet you of the 40% buildable area, whatever we call it, over half of that's going to be taken up by the driveway. And so under our rule,
Yeah, I will say that there are some other very specific rules around that lot. I don't know them exactly right now because I don't remember the details, but there were other limitations established on that lot, which was which included a maximum amount of heated square footage. So I think that one's a very unique condition, Paul.
well, yeah, but I think unless I'm missing something, my first look is we're probably looking at about a 2,500 square foot house.
Yeah, I don't think so, but we should review it once we've got the specifics in front of us.
Well, no, but that's the problem with these rules that are enforced the way we've enforced them. You pay $4 million for a lot, then you're told you have I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. It seems like this. We've ended up with a rigid, what used to be a more flexible approach by the ARC to a very rigid approach based on one calculation for a lot of the property owners, not all. And I don't know how you get around that.
I have a procedural question here. So the board so far this year has, and I recognize that this is still year one for me, but the majority of the appeals and hearings and the like that have come to the board have been related to the 60/40 calculation and the fact that the 6-foot landscape guideline is impinged upon them. Does Dora or Russ, do you have any statistics regarding how many ARC either denials are under appeal right now for that reason, or applications that have just been just rejected outright based upon that issue that are, then in some other pending non-denial state?
I don't have them right now, but I could probably figure out a good way to do it.
I think that'd be helpful to know.
At every meeting, in the minutes, you'll see, or before the meeting, Fran will write up how many homes they're looking at or drafts or whatever.
Right.
And how many are not going to be seen, were submitted but not seen, and why they're not seen. So those numbers are there.
Right.
So I can get them for you. I don't have them right in front of me, but
Sure.
I can definitely have that.
No, I think that would be helpful for us to know. And that does relate back to the motion that we discussed last month, which was to just clarify the math that's involved in the calculation, to say that the 60/40 rule should not be impeded by the 6-foot landscape guidelines, that because this seems to be a gray area, or one that's been inconsistently applied by ARC. That motion would have said, hey, ARC, this 60/40 is going to be calculated separate from the 6-foot landscape guideline. So you're not cutting out the 6-foot first and then doing the math. You're actually doing the 60/40 calculation based upon the entire lot and not based upon previous reduction for 6 feet. That also specified that on the back end, we were talking about the CWS finals, that specified that that on the back end, that it would require that anything that was incidentally disturbed that should have not been disturbed be remediated and mitigated by the owner. And I recognize that is that's more of a directive, but in as much as we as the board have seen this again and again and again, and this seems to be the biggest sticking point that's coming before us. It's also the biggest liability point from the standpoint of the association. So, I'd be in favor of advancing that motion as well. I'd be interested in your thoughts and discussions about that, particularly Terry. I think we'd be interested in your input on that, given that seems to be the biggest hang up and the biggest issue that's been confronting us this year.
Well, Stephen, I think the part of what I'm trying to do is address precisely what was the issue that was articulated in that motion, but I'm trying to do it within the boundaries of the way the covenants are established, and that is you go through the ARC. The ARC makes the recommended modifications to the language and brings it to the board. And as I said last time, the thing that I struggle with most is the notion that the board would bypass that process and move into establishing the guidelines language themselves. So part of what I'm trying to address in the modification to the currently proposed motion would be to have the ARC do precisely that in making the suggested modifications by the January 25th annual meeting, so that we don't deviate from the process that's, one, well established, and two, articulated in the covenants.
Well,
Terry, can I just interrupt one moment? Terry, can we make that the 24th so that we could have a look at that before our meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I just established it in advance of that. We can make the date whatever you want, Christine.
All right, let's put 24th in there.
First of all, procedurally, there's no way in the world we have time at that January board meeting to discuss this. It's typically much busier than that. This is going to take a long time when we talk about this. Secondly, we're going to have 2 new board members.
Oh, they won't have taken office yet. That's before the election.
No, I know that, but I just try to. I don't know what the right answer is here. I mean, Terry, we had an ARC proposal back in July that the board didn't like. So
correct. And
we have gone through the process.
I understand. And there's been a lot more discussion around it since that.
Yeah, we do it every month. Yeah, it's Groundhog Day. We do it every month. From what Steve said, these 2 motions are not at odds with each other. It will provide some clarity. And I think especially if we want to give the new board the clarity, we can do that. We can do that now. And, there's going to be a lot of turnover in the ARC because a lot of people are terming out at the end of this year. So it'd be good to give clarity to all the new members of the ARC come to their meetings in February.
I agree. I think that these are complementary. I think that, Terry in the larger project expresses all of our sense and our agreement that what's currently happening is not effective or is not as effective as it needs to be, and it's causing a lot of churn, and we need to simplify. So that's the comprehensive type of thing. The other is addressing the acute issue, which is, hey, here's the immediate sticking point, and here's the immediate thing that has been preventing progress and actually relating to appeals. So the one is the acute, the other is the comprehensive issue. And I think that they are very much aligned with one another. Solve this small issue while we are tackling, the overall. So I'd be in favor of both.
Is that, and that's Terry's proposal?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so I'm gonna have to sign off here.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Because I've got a meeting, I've got to be back by.
Okay. Thank you, Terry.
Yeah.
All right, we thank you, Terry, so
Thank you,
much for
Terry.
your time today. We're gonna go ahead and discuss this a little bit further, and Merry
Okay.
Christmas.
Okay, I'll see you in an hour.
Oh, that's right, you're coming back.
Like, see me now.
I'll tell you Happy New Year in an hour.
Thank you.
Okay,
So are we gonna some way fashion that small? We don't have to do it here in this meeting, but
I'd like to get something accomplished here.
I certainly think that this first paragraph, okay, addressing these frequent issues, okay, without indicating we're gonna do a wholesale review of the guidelines is what you're after.
I like
The very
everything
first
that,
paragraph.
yeah, but I like everything that's in here except for we need to add in that, between now and January 24th. We would get let Terry do his work with his ARCs and his counterpart and get back to us with, I mean, the work,
What he's getting back to is with this kind of an outline of
Yeah.
concepts.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, and I don't think he's doing this whole thing in the middle. I mean, we're not gonna have time for For
That, the comprehensive portion, I mean, he will be doing.
But I think it's something we as a board need to also have on our agenda for our goal setting. To
Yeah.
give
Mhm.
greater
Goals,
substance and
yeah.
direction to it.
Yeah.
So I'm
So what was the
suggesting,
motion?
I think the motion looks like your first paragraph up here. Okay, and to address these specific, the three items here, which really relate to mass, which is this 6-foot rule, 60, 40, and 50. And that they come back, he's proposing to come back with a recommendation.
Between now and January 24th to get, okay,
And
and,
propose to us what he thinks,
okay.
a rewording of those specific issues in the guidelines would produce.
Well, the 60, 40 and the 6 foot specifically,
Yeah,
with those.
Specifically,
are the
those
two.
two.
That's a big deal, and I like
Yeah,
that.
and that would be a big hurdle to get over.
But
So I
I
think
mean,
that's great.
unfortunately, he had to leave. I still don't understand how the ARC made a proposal, right? In July it was, I believe, right? We didn't like it. I
I'm
don't
sorry,
know.
Paul. Paul, I
We
was a
didn't-
couple-
We didn't approve their proposal. I don't know what Terry said, what has changed, that he's gonna come up with something different.
I thought at our last meeting, we sent Terry away to do just that, and he
No,
said.
right, and you're right, but that was the second time this year. He came to us with a proposal that both ARCs passed in July that did not get approved by the board. I think it was.
I hear what you're saying, Paul, but it's not been, ever since I've been a part of this board, have I ever been, whether it be through me or through Russ, in communication with Terry every day. And I believe
No,
that there is,
I understand that, but
I
how,
think,
if we're gonna get are we getting something similar to what the ARCs proposed in July?
no,
No, I don't think so.
no, he is very clear that he's already been, kind of clearing the path, to make this much larger than what they've seen. He knows that we're serious, and we're giving him this one last chance because, as he said, he's fearful that the board is going to, they call it overstepping. I think it's part of our job, actually, but,
I mean, that's silly.
it's,
Well, so, go ahead, Betty.
I do believe we've got specificity here on what we want him to address. We have charged him in this meeting with go away. We have a deadline, okay? And he has committed that he will produce a document for our review consideration on the 24th. I think that is fundamentally acceptable.
When is what are there ARC meetings in January to review and approve his document?
I do not know that.
There's one scheduled meeting, but these could be separate discussions as needed also.
And I think we said it's the chairs.
Wait. Terry seemed adamant about the idea of following the process, and the process being it's approved by the ARC, and that it would be inappropriate for the board to approve anything without ARC blessing. I don't agree with Terry, but that's what he just said. So that I understood that to be he would have approval, and then Casino would get approval as well.
So they'll meet with their respective committees and get back to us between now and the 24th. And what the motion she's trying to make, and I really am trusting them. I think this is a for real deal. Is the first paragraph of what I read, draft motion 12/2024, adding the words between now and the 24th of January.
But the outline of this proposal shall be presented to the board by January 8th. And then are we skipping paragraph 3 then too?
I mean, we could throw that in there, but this is something that's going to be.
Paragraph 3 is just that we're going to put together a video, but we have to.
I think that is something that, again, another.
He's already agreed to do that, so we can follow up with that. That's,
I don't.
Okay.
I think this is.
Right now, we want to get this one sticking point resolved.
All right.
Well, I don't have a problem with this resolution, but I would also support Steve's idea of passing the other one as well, to give us direction, even if it's in the interim.
We're providing direction to the ARCs, and we're also solving the issue with the homeowners today. And then ultimately, this is just a resolution of interpretation of an ambiguity. And then after the ARC's proposal has been presented to us, and after we get after we revise guidelines, then those guidelines will supersede this interpretive resolution. So the other motion would be operative now. It would be directive to them. It would solve a lot of these problems. It was the one from last month, and it would ultimately be superseded by the next set of guidelines. But there's a problem today in the sense that these things are just getting stuck because ARC is calculating in a way that's inconsistent with this.
I think that since we've had Terry here, certainly if you feel there's something in here that should be part of his thinking.
I do. I think it all should be part of it.
Okay, but I do not agree that we set one motion and then we're going to have another motion to possibly overturn it. We have given him the charge to look at this issue and look at it through this light and let him come up with one answer to us.
Ultimately, we have to come up with the answer. It's not
we have to approve an answer.
We have to approve an answer. So for that reason, I'm in support of both of them, and so I am moving that we adopt the draft motion 12/2024 as amended. We want a separate motion for the interpretive direction of the 60/40 rule. I'm so moving that as well. If we want to move those separately, we can do so.
We did not approve this motion in the past. Why is it all of a sudden coming up again in light of this?
What motion? What motion?
About the 60/40 motion from
because it was, well, can I answer your question? It was proposed last month. You and John said you needed time to read it. So I withdrew the motion and said it will be raised again at our next meeting. It's coming up again.
Jesus. You know, if we are going to be putting things on the agenda, we need to submit them in that way and not just say, well, we'll bring it up again.
Go ahead, Russ.
Okay, I'm just gonna make a couple of observations. I know I've only been here 3 months. And I recognize there's intense frustration that has happened over the last 2 years over this issue. There have been prior efforts that for whatever reason have not yielded the results that everybody would like to see on the ARC. At the same time, I think we have an opportunity here by circumstance and by timing to develop something positive. And if we can do this in a collaborative way, I believe it makes sense to consider that. We're about to go through a board election cycle. We're also going to have a committee rotation at the end of January that's going to be significant. And if you look at the terms, the vast majority of those ARC members come up for an end. So potentially you could have the majority of those committees turn over, and probably will unless the board sees differently. Those two things are going to happen. The other thing is that we've got one ARC meeting in January and one ARC meeting in February. I think if we give the opportunity for Terry to advance this for 30 days as has been discussed as a proposal, and then he comes back with something that's acceptable, the board can move forward on that. If it's not acceptable, the board can take other actions. But I think for the future, to deal with the 6 foot and the 60/40, which are the hot buttons right now, and then decide to tackle the rest of them later makes sense. To go beyond that, I think can be a decision point after this is presented from Terry for the board to make, because you're going to have a couple new board members. You're going to have the opportunity for a lot of new committee members who it's going to be brand new for them. That's going to be the first thing they're going to tackle. I would suggest that we try to do this collaborative thing.
Yeah, Russ, I think your comments are fair, except, you missed the last time we went through this. This was raised in the spring. Terry and Dave Pacina were asked to go to their committees and draft up a resolution. They did. In fact, in Terry's committee, he had 3 of his members not vote for it. It was presented to the board again, I think in July, and the board said this doesn't work. So it's not like it's Groundhog Day. We're doing the same thing again. So I've not heard one thing that would make the last proposal different than this proposal. And
I believe a lot has changed in that time frame. We've gotten a lot of substance. We've gotten a lot of feedback. I believe that the initiatives and efforts that Christine and Russ have undertaken with Terry have really put this into the proper perspective. And we're now dealing with the issue in a different way.
that's fair. I don't have a problem with what
deserves an opportunity to come back to us.
and
And if that is, go ahead.
I'm not against this resolution. I just want to do something productive in that time period and get this thing moving forward and take the motion that Steve has made and approve that as well. I'm not.
Well, I have to say, I think we need to get our protocol straight here. If we are going to have motions about an item, all of the relevant paperwork and considerations need to come forward in advance. My interpretation of our last meeting was that we were not proceeding with what went on and that we had given Terry the charge to take this one step further. Now we are reconsidering it and reconsidering it without any forewarning. I don't understand.
We actually gave Terry that charge in October, and he came back in November and said he didn't have anything.
He said he was looking at it a different way and he wanted to reshape it. And we keep flip-flopping on, are we going to make the decision? Is he going to make the decision? And now we're doing it again.
I'd like to hear what Joe has to say. Is Joe still on with us?
He's up in the top.
Yeah, I mean, I think, this, you got to step back about 10 steps and understand that the absolute backbone of the BHA existence is the ARC. The ARC should not be Russ, with respect, we're going to appoint some new members so they can figure out what the philosophy behind the ARC is. Back in the day, there were 3 full-time architects that worked for the developer who was an architect. And that's where these guidelines came from. And the term that none of us understand for stage 1, which was coastal vernacular. And, it's been, as I said, approaching 50 years. Sooner or later, this group is going to have to say, we need to consult very briefly Kent Mitchell. We need to hire a full-time, not a full-time, but a retired, experienced architect to lead the rewriting, the fact-finding and rewriting of our design guidelines. It is not a 2-month assignment. It's probably a 1-year assignment. And in the meantime, I don't have any problem with the 2 things being addressed the way Paul and others have already indicated, but the slippery slope on all of this is having hard and fast rules that you don't follow 100% of the time. End of sermon.
Sure. Well, Joe, I like what you're saying so far as the architect. It has nothing to do with this, but because I always kept thinking an architect fresh out of school, but actually I agree more with the fact that you're saying a retired architect who has the wisdom and time to spend with us. So I couldn't agree more. And it's not necessarily building guidelines at this point. It's tearing some of them down, because all they've done, just like legislature, is add and add and add to feel like we're doing something. And it's just a shame. Then that's why it's convoluted right now.
Look, and again, keep in mind, the world has really changed. I mean, the 5 years that I was involved with the ARC, stage 2 was just a gleam in the developer's mind. He gave absolutely no attention or role to the ARC into the happenings of stage 2. And yet here we are trying to put them under the same set of rules.
Yeah.
Very good point.
What's that, Paul?
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's to the point of this 40% rule. I mean, the homes around me they're probably building on much more than 40%. And, you go to Ocracoke or Whalehead, it's like there is hardly a natural understory left. I mean, but that was it is it's just
All right, I'm going to stop. Sorry, I thought you were done.
I will also tell you, Paul, just when, admittedly, I'm an old curmudgeon, but when I came to Bald Head, on the ocean side of the dune, there were no trees except sprawling, ground crawling cedars. Okay, and it's changed so much that now we have to nourish oak trees that, they're pretty, they're kind of native, but there's a storm coming that's going to wipe them out on that side of the dune.
Yeah, no, that's right.
That's kind of what I was just saying, is that I've watched the evolution over almost 30 years of how this island changes with each storm, what comes in and what leaves us. And then we don't replant some of these native things. But I'm gonna go ahead and, start with what I originally started with, the, draft motion 12/2024. As it reads in that first paragraph, and adding, between now and the 24th, Terry Steelman will report back to, the board.
This one was too early. The 6 foot. 6
Right, that's that first.
Yep.
We're not gonna do paint colors and that, we're just gonna do the
Be part of the big
6 foot
picture.
and 60/40.
Yeah,
Are
I
we,
guess,
are we deleting part of this?
I guess I should read what, Bald Head Association for. Well,
Yeah, when we get done, I can't, go ahead, and read it, that's fine.
oh, you don't have it with you, do you?
Well, no, we've changed it, I thought.
Yeah, I guess we, pardon?
It's in the board packet.
Yeah, okay. The Bald Head Association Board will request that the ARCA and ARCB chairs propose amend language in the ARC guidelines.
To modernize and simplify the documents?
Yeah, I'm trying to skip over some of that, and I was trying to make I didn't want a fragmented sentence.
I would say, amend the language, and I would say with regards to the rules you want them to deal with
Between now
and come back with a
by January 24th.
rewording and an interpretation of those two rules and propose it to the board.
So is this accurate then? And you guys add it along as I'm reading it. The Bald Head Association Board will request that both the ARCA and ARCB chairs propose amended language in the ARC guidelines to modernize and simplify the documents. It's the existing sentence. Consideration should be fairness, consistency, and also flexibility, given that many of the prime real estate lots are already developed. The focus of review.
Specific issues.
The focus of ARC review should be.
Yes. 6 foot wall and 60/40.
Right. The focus of the ARC review will be.
And I think that also includes the 50% because that's all mass related.
Yes,
Right?
it should be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I mean,
that's
it's not
okay.
paint.
Right, so the focus of the ARC rule will be the 6 foot rule, 60/40 guidelines, 50% rule.
That's it.
That's it.
So
The focus of this
Steve is
effort.
just
Right.
piecing together,
Yeah.
Steve is just piecing
Okay.
together a motion.
Yeah.
Do I have a
Yes.
second?
The outline of this proposal shall be presented to the board by January
Oh,
24th.
I'm sorry, I thought you already.
And I can
Yeah.
take this document and edit it down so that we all have it in writing. Yeah,
Because
right.
Dora's like, I gotta go
Sure.
through this recording like
Yeah.
5 times.
Yeah.
It stopped writing. I'm like, I'll just look at it later.
No, I'll draft it in a moment.
Okay.
Sure.
Can you do it by lunchtime?
Yeah, I mean,
All
I
right,
can do it
okay.
now, but do you want me to read it all again?
If you want to go ahead and make that motion right now. if you
Thank
can.
you.
Why don't, Steve, you redraft it and send it out and we can look at it.
Yeah, you can type it up.
I can, I will do that. Do you want to hear it verbally and vote on it now? Or no?
I
Sure.
want to see it.
He wants to see it.
Okay.
Okay, he wants to see it.
All right.
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna
Okay.
have to revisit that. We're not done with revisiting that before the session.
Mm.
Yeah, let me find it and I'll edit it and send it.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and move on to number 7. Election timeline. Okay, so just Dora and Russ and I have watched them work on this. Schedule to date for promoting the 2025 BHA board candidates. Everyone should have this in their folder. Have they looked at it?
Yes. I just have one question. Did I miss what the questions were?
They were in there.
Did I miss it somewhere? I probably missed it.
If we can get it.
All right. Yeah, the one question I had is we indicated that we were going to allow these individuals, apart from questions, and we did this last year, an opportunity to make their own individual statements that would be issued through the BHA using the full membership list because we don't want to violate any sensitivities. That is not in here. It just speaks to the questionnaire.
So what Betty's speaking about is what we ended up doing was sending something out with all of
We
the
sent
candidates
something out, which was like a final statement.
because we had some issues and we just want to make it for fairness for all.
For fairness, we said we won't give out the mailing list. We will ask the BHA to be the publicist, but that we would give, and I would suggest that be by like the middle of January or the second week in January. Saying they have an opportunity to present any paragraph on any.
So say 114. That's right in between the 7th and the 22nd.
There is a second questionnaire that was sent out to them.
I know.
That was one that would be pushed out when that is received. And then if we want to do another one that's separate from that,
Yes.
we can do so. I think there was a bit of a misunderstanding perhaps on our part about that from the prior discussion. Some have said, let's push out what's already been done, which we've done with the biographies and those statements. But we can add a third open-ended one if you want to.
Yes, right, that's what we said. We wanted people to be able to express them. And we did this last year. We allowed them an opportunity to sort of do a wrap-up.
That's fine.
Statement.
I would ask you, Beth, if
Final
you've got
comments.
suggestions on how to phrase that, please let us know on that. On how to
Sure,
phrase
we
that.
could also look back at what we sent out to the candidates last year.
I think just a final
Okay,
comment,
and
final
then that-
comments from the
yeah.
candidate.
Yeah, it's their sort of wrap up to the membership. And then we take the responsibility to publish it and get a full publication to all members.
Fine.
It's an email or something. It's not a compass or an
Sure.
island report. It was,
It's
yeah, and we did that last year.
that,
Do we have a date? Did you pick a date?
I was saying the 14th
Okay.
because that's between the 7th and the 22nd.
Yeah, it shouldn't linger any past that, you know.
Yep, that's mid-month.
Okay.
My brother's birthday.
Oh.
Whose birthday?
My brother.
Oh, well, happy birthday. Shall we pass a motion?
Could one of you look through what we have with the candidates last year? I could probably find it since I was one of them. But you remember, right?
What is this?
You remember we had an opportunity to write something if we wanted to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was after
I
the
would go-
social media.
Well, they
issue.
Yeah.
just, so there was just something that was published in the Compass. Was that not addition? Was that not in addition to what they had previously written?
Sure it was.
I thought it
No,
was.
Yeah,
No?
we've got lots of.
no, it was a reference to
Oh.
their, what they had already
I
written.
think the additional thing for us though was to try to buffer the,
It was because we had mixed
Well-
mixed mailing lists. And we said with the,
right, it was to
With
buffer the irregularities.
right, so we wanted the BHA to
Yeah.
get it to all their members.
Which I'm not aware of any irregularities this time.
No.
Okay.
Betty's just thinking it's
Okay,
now a nice
Alright.
practice that we could follow.
okay.
Okay.
And I have no issue with that. All right. All right, so unless there's any other comments here, everyone can see this. I don't need to go through the entire thing. It's a couple months full of lots of stuff. So we're doing our part so far as promoting our candidates up to the annual meeting. All right, number 8, update on the Corporate Transparency Act.
Yes, just a quick update. I think you received by email, but just to remind you that we did receive information that the U.S. District Court in Texas has published a decision related to the Corporate Transparency Act. The short version is that the recommendation from CAI is that this applies to all community associations in the United States. And we've also been in touch with the firm that was handling our submission for the Corporate Transparency Act. We are not required at this time to file. There are some that are doing that and filing, but I think at this point we're monitoring the situation. If this ends up getting overturned and we have to move forward with the submission, we'll stay on top of that and we'll do so. But right now we're not doing anything with it. So it's on hold for now.
What about for those of us who already did it?
The information that you gave has been gathered, but we have not completed the filing.
Okay, good.
Have you buried it in secrecy so that no one knows our birth date?
I mean, I don't like that. I don't know.
The firm,
I don't need-
Leanna, you followed up on that. So once we have gathered have been handled appropriately, but we have not completed the filing.
Okay.
We won't unless this goes forward.
All right, that's good to know.
Did you fill it out?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it's just my driver's license, so.
Yeah, I was trying to think, it didn't even ask for my social security, which I thought was one of the things that we're gonna be asking for, and they did not. It was just a driver's license. Address, phone number. Okay, if there's no more questions on that, we're moving on to 9, search status for the executive director. Basically today at 2:30, we're going to have a Zoom meeting with, what is it? Kurt Keebler with Brad, with Kurt Keebler. Is it Keebler or Kubler? The search committee will be sitting and, we will be, talking to a few candidates. I think, what has he got? Maybe 5?
Yeah, I think, didn't they say they were, well, they asked us for our rankings, the search committee, and they're now massaging all that.
Yep. And then, so after today, we move on to January 7th, and we'll be doing some in-person interviews also. Dora will be hosting our candidates, and guiding them around the island, which will be lots of fun. And then we'll have it narrowed down after that, and then we'll keep you all in the loop and let you know how that is going. We're really excited. Brad said he's got.
It's a good process.
Yeah, it
Really
is.
professional.
I'm really pleased with this firm, and I'm glad that I, was able to bump into them. Again, we got Russ Happen Chance through this firm, which he's not even a part of. And it's been great. It really has. So looking forward to that this afternoon, and then January 7th, and then we'll follow up again with the membership and let them know how it's going. So that is that.
So with that in mind, do we envision we will have made an offer? Yeah. Are we hoping we will have a decision by the 25th? Or are we giving them an extended time, do you think?
I bet we have a decision. I mean,
It'd be nice if they could be at the
I
end.
think we'll know better today.
Yeah.
We'll know better today. And by the way, in talking to him, I don't think you were in the room, but I was really clear. You need to drive home to whoever these people are that want us to consider them, that they have got to take a ferry. That the ferry can be delayed by weather, by, what have you, mechanical issues, that it is an island, that, all of the things that should be able to chase someone away. So anybody still standing is a serious candidate. I'm really pleased with Brad and being able to find who was found. Okay, with that being said, if there's no more questions about that, we need to circle back around.
One quick comment. It's probably far too late in that Paul's already indicated we don't have a surplus. But if we have to pay any headhunter fees, it would be better to do them this year if we have a surplus than to carry it into next year.
That's contemplated in the forecast, Joe.
Right.
So we do. I mean, there may be a little bit of carryover in January. Both of those are planned for this year.
Thanks.
And we also plan the remainder in January, assuming that it goes as we expect.
That's a good question, Joe. And then also what I will tell you, and I meant to mention this, what Russ has offered, it just really depends on when we're able to get this individual, when they start to offer his services for a couple of weeks, just to help to catch this individual up to where he or she would need to be. Because that's something, we put 3 months into Russ and he's already, I know, he's so up to speed that I'm mortified that this new person is going to get here and it'll be, possibly more than 3 months. So anyway, I guess I don't know if I need board approval or not, but I'm very much welcoming Russ's help into getting this individual settled.
No.
Yeah.
We have.
Yeah, his efforts have been most impressive and are sincerely appreciated.
Thank you, Russ.
Thank you.
Lifesaver.
Thank you.
Hey,
Yeah, that was my Christmas gift and birthday gift. Y'all don't need to get me anything.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
If there's nothing else there, we're gonna circle back around to Steve, who should be done with his.
Laura, is this your screen?
It is my screen, yes.
I'm just going to email this to you just out of the.
Good. It's done.
Done.
Vote on it now.
Right, so Steve is going to be making a motion that he's sharing with all of us, so we all can read it.
Motion.
It's done, yes.
Okay. You get it in 15, 20 minutes after the spam filter.
Oh,
No, I'm kidding about that. Hopefully it comes through right away.
Yes. Yay.
Okay, so in fairness, I added another line here as a.
can you read it? Because I can't.
Yeah, I can, as a concession here, and I'm gonna make a
Make it big.
concession.
I'm working on it.
But I added a line in conjunction with that.
Okay.
So are you able to open that so it just goes on the lip over? No. Okay.
We don't know where.
Oh, no, too big. Too big.
Oh, geez, yeah, hang on.
Right. Can't read it off the side of the
There we
page. There we are. Okay. So moved. The Bald Head Association BHA Board requests that the ARC A and ARC B chairs propose amended language in the ARC guidelines to modernize and simplify the documents. Consideration should be fairness, consistency, and also flexibility, given that many of the prime real estate lots are already developed. The focus of the ARC rule shall be the 6-foot rule within the landscape guidelines, the 60-40 guidelines, and the 50% rule. The ARC should consider the draft board motion that was proposed at the November, December board meetings. That was my concession. The outline of this proposal shall be presented to the board by January 24th, 2025.
I'm perfectly fine with that.
Okay.
Excellent.
The question that I have here is, do we need to put any meat around defining the 50%?
No, it's what's already in the document.
Okay, well, see the 6-foot rule I added within the landscape guidelines so that there's a ready reference
Yeah,
there.
that's fair.
60-40, I think, is specifically enumerated. Is the 50% rule specifically enumerated there?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so that there wouldn't be any ambiguity.
No.
Okay.
Good job.
Okay, so that is Steve's motion. Is there a second? Betty
I
has
second
seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Well, I've got a question. What is the issue with the 50% rule?
It's just, it's hand in hand.
Interpretation.
There's been a couple processes where the 50% rule has been an issue for certain homeowners and builders.
Can you expand on that?
Without saying names,
Yeah, yes, without saying names, yeah.
meeting that you guys had on November 27th was mainly defined a lot by the 50% rule issues.
Okay, so Paul, are you saying that maybe Steve should expand on that a little bit?
And we've been at this for 2/3 of the year
I know.
on the 60-40 issue. Now we're adding, and we've been unable to get the ARC to give us something that is acceptable. So now we're adding another issue on there. I just.
Well, I thought the reason it was on there was that fundamentally, when we come to size, if you were to say size, that these seem to be the 3 rules that impact those decisions. And so if you exclude it, then you end up with this extra rule now that has to be applied. That's why I thought it was in there.
I guess a question, Betty and Paul, is has the 50% rule been at the top of the controversy this year?
No, it's been 60-40, and that's because that's been the majority.
Right.
It's been a few hot issues revolving that are around the 50% rule, but it's mainly the 60-40 that's an issue.
Do you think it should be added or taken out, or based on what you've heard and seen?
I mean, compared to the 60-40, it's not as aggressively an issue.
I would say for
but it is still an
completeness,
issue.
it's in there. I mean, I
Okay,
would
why-
hate
why
to
don't we-
come back later
why
and
don't
find
we-
out we solved one and then, oh, well, we didn't consider this.
Well, then how about this? The focus of the ARC rule will the focus of the ARC, I need to rewrite that. That's a bad word. The focus of the
I don't-
ARC rule, that's bad English.
The focus of
The focus of the ARC review, that's the word. The primary focus of the ARC review will be the 6-foot rule and the 60/40 guidelines. Secondarily, the ARC will also review the 50%.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I just would hate to have us do one and.
Paul, how was that?
Mm-hmm. Good job.
Paul, are you happy? Well, I'm sorry. Paul, is that acceptable?
Is that better?
I mean, it's fine. I mean, we're doing what we do best. Delaying a decision. This has gotten ridiculous.
I know.
We're gonna be a year before.
It's not gonna be a year.
I'll bet you.
And Terry had already seen the prior one too, so he knew the 50% was.
You've seen the one that was in your packet, yeah.
Here, Dora, I'm gonna send this to you again.
I'll try to be better at this one.
Okay. It's motoring its way to you.
And we need to be sure that Terry has a copy of that.
Immediately.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
No, but also a copy of the last
He's got that,
motion.
but we'll make sure
Okay,
he gets
make
everything he
sure.
needs. Absolutely.
Well, we could also add the word, we also add the word attached. So that way we're sure that they're working off the same sheet of music there.
Okay.
You wanna read it one more time?
Sure. The Bald Head Association Board requests that the RK and RP chairs propose amended language in the ARC guidelines to modernize and simplify the documents. Consideration should be fairness, consistency, and also flexibility, given that many of the prime real estate lots are already developed. The principal focus of the ARC review will be the 6-foot rule and the landscape guidelines and the 60/40 guidelines. Secondary focus will be the 50%. The ARC should consider the draft board motion that was proposed at the November and December board meetings, around a copy of which is attached. The outline of this proposal shall be presented to the board by January 24th.
Okay, Steve has made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously.
All right, Steve's motion is on the table as well, right?
Well, he attached that motion to the motion.
Oh, he earlier made the other motion as well.
No. There's
That
only
was the
one
motion.
motion.
No,
Steve started talking about that motion and then the conversation turned and switched on to everything else. He never made a motion.
You tried.
Started to.
all right.
All right, number 10 is adjourn. We will take can we do a 10-minute break and then come back to executive session?
Yeah, 'cause they
It's right, good.
And we have lunch coming, right, at 1? We don't have to go anywhere.
Nope.
Did you get it?
Ruby,
Start at 11:40.
Yeah, We started 11:40, yeah, so 10 minutes. I'm gonna have to, I've got a couple things I've got to do.
All right.
So motion to adjourn. Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, see y'all in 10 minutes.